So as introduced, I'm Greg Neely, and I'm a co-founder and principal of Forge Media and Design. We're a design agency that's been around for now just over 11 years. Started with 3 partners and have grown significantly since then. Well, essentially, if you want to know what we do, in simple terms, we make websites, mobile apps, donor recognition walls, interactive media kiosks, digital public art, as well as graphic design, signage, wayfinding, and dynamic environments and branded environments. Now, you'll probably see that our work is pretty wide-ranging. Everything from the digital space to the physical space and everything in between. But in fact, we never feel like we're being pulled in disparate directions. In fact, whether we're developing an app or designing signage, the goal is always the same. We want to provide people with a great experience. We want to provide an experience that generates a specific impact, an impression, a result, and a response. So our primary focus, and this is how we define what we do, and believe me, I don't know how many of you own firms, run firms in the design world, but one of the most challenging things to do is to define who you are and what you do. So this is our latest crack at it. And this essentially came from the idea that we're obviously design, but also a lot of the work we do is redefining, where you have something existing and we're rethinking it. And it is about experience in terms of engagement with people, but the question is why? What are we actually trying to achieve? And what we really distilled it down is we're trying to inspire specific behaviors. And that encompasses results and response and impressions and all of those things. But at the end of the day, it's behaviors. So today, I'm going to talk about user interfaces, being a digital business code conference, as a mechanism to achieve that end. But my goal today is a little different. I want to get you thinking about UI in a different context. I want to get you thinking about UI from a different perspective. A mode of thinking, in fact, that opens doors to some very powerful and exciting possibilities. So let me ask, who here is design code where UI plays a role in your work every day, where you're designing, creating UIs?
Sometimes.
I would expect most people at this conference in some perspective. And for us designers and developers that are doing that, it means the mechanism by which a user interface with content, where a user interfaces with content through mobile apps, websites, software. UI, the whole concept of UI came from the software world of user interface and user experience. And that, in broad perspective, is where it is typically focused on. But if we shift and broaden our perspective, everything actually starts to change. And you realize that anything and everything we interact with is really a form of a user interface. And this concept is quite transformative idea for designers like us. Because when we think about that, if anything can be a user interface, it means that everything can and should be designed to work better, more seamlessly, more beautifully, more functionally, which is all made possible by following the principles that we all know of good user experience and interface design. So think about that for a moment and let that sink in. Everything is a user interface. Your entire world that you interact with is a user interface. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself and I want to back up a bit. So if we break it down, what is a UI? UI is simply a collection of tools that you use to interact with something, right? It mediates between us and our environment. It translates functionalities into choices and translates our intentions into actions. So for a smartphone, glass touchscreen is a hardware UI, right? How sensitive and accurate it is part of what makes it good or bad. The on-screen buttons and menus and sliders are all part of the UI. And you all know a lot of time and energy is spent by app designers to get that UI just right. The way it feels, the way it responds, the way it looks, the way it engages people. By adjusting the colors, the shadows underneath the buttons, the sound animation, all of that interaction at that very personal level. A lot of time and energy goes into that. And we're also not sweating these details just because we feel like it and because simply we want to make awesome things, and we do all want to make awesome things. But there's a massive amount of evidence that is something as simple as the way a button looks and reacts can have a huge impact on whether someone decides to complete a purchase, or whether they remain in an app, or a website, or browse away. And again, this is all things that I'm sure most people in this room understand and deal with every day. So, everybody knows about the hamburger menu? I mean, I'm sure you all use it. We love it because it's a nice, sleek icon, and it's beautiful and simple. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It solves a lot of problems. However, you also probably know that A/B studies have found a surprisingly large proportion of users don't understand it and don't use it. Now, we all like to ignore that because in our world, that hamburger icon is just awesome. It just makes it solve so many problems. But if you really look at it, it's not as awesome as it seems. Usage rates go way up, and I'm a designer, so I want all the designers just plug your ears because you're going to cringe. When the word menu is used, and even worse, when you put a little box around it to help people understand that's a button, usage rates go way up, and it becomes much more clear. So, it's no surprise that if your customers interact primarily via an app or website, UI design has a huge impact on business success and metrics. Designers and developers, like you, already understand that importance, the importance of good UI design, and how the UI is key to meeting the objectives of what you're trying to do. And we know that's where there's a pretty clear set of widely recognized principles. Principles and best practices of good user experience design and good interface design. So let's look at those principles for a minute. First, to be consistent so people can use past experience and predict what happens next at an intuitive level. To use hierarchy, grouping, and sequence to organize information. To use plain language, getting ahead of myself, to tolerate errors and let people recover from them. And now, to use plain language so they can easily understand the cues. To simplify the choices and eliminate unneeded options. To give clear feedback so they understand what's from their actions in terms of the response from that. And one of the really important ones is to be discoverable, to help people understand where they are in the process and to make things as apparent as possible. It's been proven time and time again that following these principles, and I'm sure I don't think I'm saying anything new to you guys understand these principles, will result in a UI that people will engage with and that will love. Will drive click-through sales, customer retention, loyalty, and all those metrics that our clients are looking for that is a measure of success. But when you think about it, those principles, like error tolerance, discoverability, clear feedback, those principles apply in more areas than just a graphical or screen-based interactive UIs. Hardware and software is really just the tip of the iceberg. Take services, for instance. A service provider can look at an entire range of customer interactions as a user experience, as a user interface. So what do I mean? Okay, so you're all probably Rogers, TELUS customers. Think about every single interaction you had with your mobile phone company. How many people love their mobile phone company? Wow, that's awesome. So, From the time you first heard of them, and I'm sure that's going back many years, though, you know, every once in a while a new one comes up that promises the world that everything's going to be different, and then isn't. To the time you signed the contract, received your first bill, the time you called for tech support to upgrade your plan, each of those moments and touch point between you and the brand together to add up to the user interface between you and the company. So is it a well-designed UI or not? And I think by the show of hands, I think it's pretty clear that it's not. Was the information in their ads clear? Did it match to the customer service rep when they told you when you signed up? Were there moments when you felt frustrated? I should say, were there moments when you didn't feel frustrated? Or not sure what the next steps were? And was it obvious the company had thought about each touch point? And again, these are rhetorical questions. We know the answer is no, as part of the cohesive overall experience. Those questions define the difference between a good UI and a bad UI, because it essentially is that mechanism of interaction. So, difference between a good UI or a poor UI is the reason why some companies have a reputation for terrible service. It's the reason why some websites are easy to use and others are a pain. It's the reason why some thermostats are a pleasure to use. How many people have Nest? It's brilliant. Love it. Wonderful. And some are not. So, sometimes a bad UI is created on purpose, believe it or not. Think of an airline booking website that tricks you into upgrading a seat for a hidden fee and tricks you into buying travel insurance. And I have to point this out. I've seen this on CheapOair and things like that, but Ryanair takes the cake. When you go to Ryanair and to put in your passenger details, you're given an opportunity to select a country. It turns out on Ryanair, no travel insurance required as a country. If you do not select no travel insurance required and select your country, guess what? You've just bought travel insurance. That is an intentional UI that is intended to confuse and is really effective. Usually bad UIs are the result of inattention to the customer experience. People just too focused on the business side of things or the insular challenges they're dealing with and not thinking about what impact things are going to have by their decisions. It also shows that possibly designers, and I don't want to have this say this reflecting on the people in this room, but there are designers out there that give it due attention, but more often than not it's because the client couldn't see the value in investing in it and the time and effort required to create a good UI. So, Apple Store. They have absolutely created a seamless experience. Or flying Virgin Air. Anybody fly Virgin Air? Apple, Virgin Air. It was entirely intentional and not by accident. Those companies took the time to examine each touch point between them and their customers. And they designed a UI to match their brand values. These companies made the choice to use a strong UI as a brand differentiator to help them with their goals. And the results speak for themselves, and it's absolutely working. The Apple Store is a great example because the UI encompasses more than just the touchpoint interactions between the staff. A lot of stores are very much about that one-on-one, and it's incredibly important. But in this case, it goes much further. Designing the entire store environment is one massive user interface that is built on the principles of great user experience design. At Forge, when we create branded spaces, immersive environments, and wayfinding systems, we've recognized that actually what ties together the design in these environments isn't simply adding graphics or signs to a space. It's about helping an environment communicate and to be responsive to its users and its audiences. So the next thought I want you to think about is make the environment a UI. Because at the end of the day, the environment is a UI. When you're moving through this building. You are interfacing with it. It has an inherent user interface. The question is, was it intentional or not? Was it designed or not? Was it thought through or not? But it is happening. So, in other words, those same principles UI design, like error tolerance, discoverability, and clear feedback, to make the physical environment itself into UI. So the tools we have at our disposal to craft what we call an environmental UI are things we probably take for granted when we walk into a space. The lighting levels, acoustics, sight lines, smells, hundreds of other cues that we perceive both on a conscious and a subconscious level. And we have to consider the full multisensory experience wherever possible. Even if you don't notice these cues, when the environment makes you feel a certain way, and think about your own experience. Anxious, at ease, sophisticated, excited, it's because the environmental UI, designed or not, is telling you how to feel and suggesting how to act and behave. All of those elements together are interacting with you. So let's talk about a few examples. Cinnabon. Anybody already smelling it? When I say Cinnabon, what comes to mind? The smell. And did you know that the smell isn't an accident? The smell, or just a byproduct of the baking process, it's an actual branded scent. It's a branded scent that they pump out into the space in front of the store. That is your first piece of the user interface for Cinnabon. That's a basic example of an environmental UI because they're customizing or designing aspects of your experience in the space that are going to, or intended to, affect your behavior. A more sophisticated example of environmental UI, of course, might be a lobby at a luxury hotel, right? Soft lighting, subtle background music, rich acoustics are the result of the floor and the wall finishes. They all work together to give you a sense of the space, a strong sense of the brand. Before you even interact with the staff, before you talk to anybody, you immediately get a feel and an impression. By obscuring the view from the entrance, they can also do things like to help you encourage you to explore the space and discover. Whereas other environments, like hospitals, educational institutions, clear sight lines between major destinations and landmarks and reference points, they help people find their way without reading a sign. You don't need signs to help people navigate and orient in a space. What you need is clarity and apparent cues that relate to each other that your brain actually connects together and forms a cognitive map. So let's switch gears just a little bit. An environmental UI, sorry for the low-res image, couldn't get something better. Environmental UI can be as complex as a full space, but it can all be as simple as a doorknob. And we have, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this is a brilliant video. This video is about Norman doors, and it is a great example of how an environment can be a pleasure to use or frustration, and it all depends on how it's designed.
This door on the 10th floor of the Vox Media office that I hate so much. God damn it. You ever get this door wrong?
Pretty regularly.
Have you seen people misuse it?
All the time, every day. Constantly. I hate this door.
Me too, Kelsey. But here's the thing. As soon as you start looking for confusing doors, they are everywhere.
It's push.
So what'd be a better human-centered door?
An ideal door is one that as I walk up to it and walk through it, I'm not even aware that I had opened the door and shut it. So if you had a door which had a flat plate, what could you do? Nothing. The only thing you can do is push. So see, you wouldn't need a sign. A flat plate, you push.
This kind of push bar with the piece sticking out on one side works well too, so you can see what side you're supposed to push on. But the tyranny of bad doors must end.
I think that it's a really shitty design. They put a pull handle, one is a push. And it should be a flat panel right here. And I don't handle it. That's how I feel about the store. It's very misleading.
Angry.
You're right, Becky. You're goddamn right. And if we all thought like you, well, we might just design a better world together.
It won't open
That's an
because
awesome
it's
scene.
a security door. What the f*** are you two doing?
So how many times have things like this happened to you? Got some hands? Awesome. And guess what? You blamed yourself, didn't you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or if you got lost or something fell off, you blamed yourself. But it wasn't you. It was the environmental UI. It was the user interface that was poorly designed or not designed at all. So the door handle that is part of the UI, ideally, sorry, let me back up for a second. All of these elements, when we're talking about the environmental space, need to work together to inform how you interact with the space. That is the whole concept. The door handle is a part of environmental UI. Ideally, it should all work together to tell you how you should respond, interact, use, navigate that space. And whether or not it serves its purpose well, it tells a story about whether the designers took the care to create it with you in mind. And this is where we come back to user experience design, human-centered design, and user interface. So now let's get into some specific examples of work that we're doing very briefly, if that's applicable. So creating environmental UI that puts people first is exactly what we're doing at the Comcast Innovation Technology Center that's currently being built in Philadelphia. It's designed by Sir Norman Foster. It's actually designed by him himself. I don't know if you guys know this, but Norman Foster went to school at Yale and contemporary with Buckminster Fuller. And there are no buildings designed by Norman Foster anywhere in the vicinity of Yale yet until this building. So this will be the first one. It will be one of the tallest buildings in the Western Hemisphere. It includes a Four Seasons and spa on the top. And of course it has gourmet restaurants, high-end retailers, all of that. But most importantly, it's going to be a new home for Comcast's creative and technology team. Comcast has a vision of being the Google of content. So they are creating a Google campus in the sky. So that whole concept of the open, creative, collaborative space, instead of out in a suburb, they're putting it in a tower right downtown. And our challenge was to bring all of these different uses and elements together so it feels like a cohesive experience. We also had to help people find their way, of course, orient themselves, enjoy the experience, and while seamlessly integrating with the architecture. It all needed to be a cohesive final solution. So our approach to create environmental UI, we first looked at the various touch points. Those moments of interaction between the building and its users and where we could leverage that we could communicate. And one big example is elevators, right? I think the elevators are seriously due for a rethink. And people spend a lot of time in elevators, and it really is an environment that begs to be activated. And I'm sure, how much time do you guys spend in elevators staring at the walls, staring at each other, and you're going, and it's a massive pathway, right? So that's a lost opportunity. Now, I do have to say, there's actually a lot of work being done in terms of finding ways to activate elevators, and with that goal in mind. And one I'd love to highlight is the brilliant work that was done at World Trade Center for One World Observatory. Has anybody seen this elevator experience? It was posted on New York Times. I'm going to show you a very quick video of it in a second. In this elevator ride, you're taken on an immersive journey. So when you go to the One World Observatory, you go into the elevator, taken on this immersive journey through the history of New York. From its early beginnings to modern day, covering 515 years. And the really cool thing is you're presented with this perspective from the vantage point in the elevator from where you would actually overlook the city and the landscape. So, and it does that in the context of moving through the building from the bottom to the top. So let's watch it for just a moment. back in 1600. Well, you see the year there, right? So you can see it's really well done. It's immersive. It surrounds you. It makes the elevator ride a piece of narrative. So awesome, awesome work. But what if we could take things up a few notches and not just stop at that storytelling narrative element? What if we could create something that was also informational, provided orientation, yet no less engaging? What if we could create an elevator experience that was truly an interface to the function and purpose of the elevator itself? And what if we could do it in a way that was truly responsive in real time? And that's exactly what we're doing for Comcast. Drawing continuous live data from the elevator system, where the elevator is, what direction it's moving, which floors are next, how fast is it traveling, the amount of acceleration, doors opening, closing, everything about the elevator's cab motion and position in real time. We are taking that and taking that live data stream and translating it through a 3D game engine that creates a powerful experience that communicates, engages, and orients users in real time for their entire journey. We help users using the elevator understand where they are, where they're going, what is present at their desired destination as a seamlessly embedded element in the elevator experience, which also reinforces the purpose and brand of the building as an innovation center. So it's something really interesting to think about. And this, taking live data from an elevator and translating into an experiential graphic that orients in this way, I can tell you has not been done before in our experience or scene, because you should have seen the reaction when we had the first conversation with the elevator company. You want to do what? How? Oh, I don't know if that's possible. They've never externalized their data before. So it's kind of interesting. So a couple of other things. There's many other touchpoint opportunities we're exploring in the projects that are being enhanced through environmental UI. We designed a large scale, should have a person in here. You guys realize how big this is. It's like 5 feet tall. We designed a large scale dynamic pylon at the main entrance using glass and responsive lighting that actually responds to the movement of the people through the space and gives you a clear message about the brand and a preview of what you're going to experience inside. And all the stuff I'm showing you is not done yet. Like, this is all coming to fruition 2018. But we're giving you a sneak peek of some of the stuff that's being developed. In the Four Seasons areas, we're tightly integrating the signage with the architectural finishes, giving subtle wayfinding cues, and not creating a whole nother visual layer that competes for your attention. All of these elements are integrated into the fabric of the architecture to come together as components of a cohesive, intentional UI that proactively, if I could say it, proactively engages, orients, and communicates. That is the user interface. That is the people using the building. That is the connection point. And that is how, in terms of that's how you can take an environment and think about those opportunities. And through all of that, we're still conveying a clear brand message for the building that works at almost a subconscious level. So beyond architectural opportunities, storytelling is also a powerful way to help create strong connections with an environment. Anybody know Colin Ellard, University of Waterloo? Big fan. He's done extensive research and many TED Talks and written groundbreaking book on cognitive science and wayfinding that delves into the incredible power of story and narrative has on human experience, navigation, and orientation. Anybody heard of the book Where Am I? Really interesting. Read it. Really, really interesting. The power of story in terms of retention is incredible. Here in London, we're doing a project where we're using narratives and stories as a major component of the new environmental UI at the London Convention Centre. LCC was looking to improve their guest experience. And as part of their, I don't know if you know this, but they're doing a lot of renovations. There's a Canadian Music Awards coming up. And we took the opportunity to look at what information the guests need at each touch point and what types of interaction is needed through the use of the facility. So we have digital screens that guide you to the right conference room and will confirm you're in the right place when you arrive. And the screens also communicate stories and images about LCC and reinforce the brand's messages. One of the things LCC wanted to do was convey a sense of story and culture about London. So at each of the entrances to the conference rooms, we're installing theme walls that reflect London's story and convey elements of its culture. Themes like Carolinian Forest, our proud heritage, are represented with dramatic silhouetted reliefs that are going to be brought to life with lighting. The panels include short excerpts of texts that tell engaging stories from London's history and culture. And if you think about it, whether you have time to explore the full narratives or just take in the symbology at a very ephemeral level of the theme walls in passing, it still will make an impression. Those touch points will enhance your experience. Those stories we're telling will help people find deeper connection to London and the convention center, and maybe inspire them to return to London for the next trip. The impact is incremental, but no less powerful. Like with the Compass project, the environmental UI we're implementing for London Convention Center isn't an entirely new design language that we're imposing on the space. We see it as a communication layer that lives in the space, harmonizes with the architecture, and helps the building speak to the users. When we're creating a communication layer, our goal is often to create a unique sense of space, a place, something that is distinct and beautiful. And placemaking was our goal. At this last project I want to show you very quickly, where we took on a design challenge at an office tower in Toronto called 2 Queen Street, at the corner of Queen and Yonge. The building is a 20-story commercial tower that's just a few steps from the Eaton Centre, and it also integrates a historic facade, and it has the overall architecture originally had this strong nautical theme, the sense of safe water. It was for maritime life and insurance company about 10 years ago. And that includes a huge lead-lined sculpture, and it has these undulating ceilings that suggest waves. Our goal was to refresh the image of the entrance lobby and the exterior plaza and help reestablish 2 Queen as a Tier 1 property. It was one of these office buildings that was launched, was very successful, and then started to fade. And the initiative was not only driven by the client, but also the tenants who wanted to present a stronger impression for their clients and visitors. And at first glance, from the client's perspective, our task consisted of simply developing a new signage solution. However, instead, we looked at the whole picture. We sought to create a total entry experience that was unique, memorable, and would expand on the existing narratives and architecture of the space. Essentially, the thinking was, how do we create a multifaceted environmental UI that communicates and creates an indelible sense of place, thereby creating a landmark in the urban landscape. The centerpiece was 2 major dynamic art pieces. And they were entirely embedded into the lobby space. And working from nautical motifs of dappled light across water, we fractalized and abstracted the imagery to create this sense of dapple light and water refractively. But it is created as a generative art installation where the subtle hues slowly change through the day. The wind speed impacts the amplitude and speed of the motion. And the amazing thing is it's never twice the same. It's entirely generated by code, but it still conveys the building's narratives. And the result is a dramatic evolving landmark that is always distinct every time you enter the building. Now, we didn't stop there because the art element is critically important. However, we also added an integral functional element where you actually have branding, but you also have messaging. So the building can have messages, but they can also have their tenants welcome individuals to the building when they arrive, elevating the whole experience. And our new pylon carries a dynamic illuminated band that connects with what you're seeing inside. And taken together, all of these touch points work to create a new identity for the property. So whether people consciously realize it or not, the new environmental UI we created will fundamentally change how people feel about the space, how they feel about the building, and it will impact how they perceive the building's brand. And it will also have a positive impact on the reputation of the tenants that occupy the building. The key to getting the best results from environmental UI is not to overdo it. And hopefully that's come through in some of the work I've shown. If the communication the layer that you're creating shouts or doesn't integrate with the surroundings as a unified design, you're not serving the user experience. You're just creating more and more cacophony. The goal has always been at the end of the day that everything needs to feel like it was designed at once as a single design vision. And in many cases, we don't even want people to consciously notice the environmental UI. Users may not realize they're experiencing it, but they will notice their surroundings are comfortable, harmonious, and easy to navigate. And the place that leaves them feeling confident rather than frustrated and anxious. So what else can environmental UI do? Well, it can make or break your reputation, right? We talked about that earlier. I'm sure you're well aware of the role that social media plays and whether a business sinks or swims. Online reviews can have a huge impact and effect on customer choices, and major consumer brands can be brought low by the broadcast of the wrong kind of experience. And depending on your experience with the business, customers can either become ambassadors for the brand or just the opposite. So, UI thinking gives you a whole new toolkit and range of opportunities to improve the customer experience. Every touch point in environmental UI is a chance to strengthen the brand message and to create a seamless customer and audience experience. You just have to do it with intention and authenticity. Everybody know Jeff Bezos? Not personally, obviously. But. So he has a quote that I love. Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. Really, really important to think about it. But just a couple of things to finish up. What's really exciting about what we're talking about today, and what's really exciting to us, is when you get beyond the screen and apply UI thinking to the full world around us and everything we interact with, the possibilities and opportunities for elevating human experience are truly endless. So I want to leave you with a couple of challenges. Well, one challenge and a thought. Take a moment to think about where else you can apply UI thinking. If a door handle is a UI, if an Apple store is a UI, if the London Convention Center is a UI, where else can we apply principles of UI design and help create a more beautifully functional experience? The way we see it at Forge is the most important, and the most important question is, how can we create UIs that are so seamless, so useful, so well suited to users, what users want to achieve, that they disappear completely. And it's all that's left is the user getting exactly the result they intended, and maybe even an experience they never even imagined. how can your UIs be so good that they disappear completely? Because after all, the best UI is the one that no one notices. Thank you.